Welcome to my channel. Here, I don't just speak, but I invite you to think. Throughout my videos, I've questioned the deepest held beliefs, from philosophy, the dynamics of religion and faith, to personal identity. I ventured into the controversial because I know that only in honest, critical confrontation do we grow. My voice is a search for truth, unafraid of what is difficult. If you join this community today, you don't just watch, but you engage. Together, we open the door to a courageous dialogue, one that transforms us. Subscribe, share, and let's keep questioning, growing, and seeking truth together. Oh, there's no sound because I'm not actually talking. Sorry, guys. I'm getting my. Can you hear me now? Should be able to hear me now. Let's probably ask. I'm assuming you can hear me now. Why is this not? Oh, yeah, it is showing. Okay. I'm so confused. I'm so dysfunctional. I'm so bad at this. Missing Mod, it's so good to see you stop by. What an honor it is to have you here, sister. I see Bionic Latinos out there. There was so many people who showed up to that last stream. That was probably one of my biggest turnouts ever. Tell you the truth, I'm sure it probably was. So that's really cool. I'm glad everybody enjoyed the show. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I'm glad that people turned out for it. I need to finish getting my coffee ready and stuff like that. So if people want to join, I think I pinned the link correctly in the YouTube chat. So if it's not pinned correctly, I guess you guys can leave me type a message here or whatever. Oh, thank you, Bionic. Yeah, it was high quality, not from anything I said, I'm sure. You guys just, it's the same old rambling from me. But yeah, Dr. Carrier definitely upped the quality of that show. That was a good guess. That should really, I was telling my wife, well, I'll wait and see if other people join in here. But yeah, let me get my coffee. If you guys want, just jump into the backstage. And as soon as I sit down, I will let you in to the panel. And you guys can really talk about anything that you want. It's an open forum today. You guys drive the show, pick whatever topic you want. Okay, guys, I sat back down, got my coffee. Does anybody want to join the conversation here? I don't know how much energy I have to just do a solo act here. I really just set this up because I always do a live stream for everybody, an open panel, and there was quite a bit of chat going on in the last video in the comment section. So I'm assuming you guys have a lot to say. I see Joel's out there, my brother Joel. So good to see you, family. It's always nice to see you stop by. I have not gotten a chance to speak to you yet. And I miss you. I really enjoyed interacting with you over on Scott and Sophia's channel. So I've gotten a chance to talk to Scott. He stopped by. Sophia hasn't made it over here yet. And you've been in the comments, but you haven't joined the panel yet. And you're such a smart guy, and you're such a critical thinker. You really do have a great mind on you. And so I'd love to have you jump into one of these conversations sometime if you're available to. It is either way. It's nice to see you show up in the comment section. I see Bionic Latinos out there. I think he said he's got to run an errand. I know somebody else. I think it might have been Darklight. I can't remember who it was. Somebody else said that they were on the road. They'd like to jump in here when they get back. I don't know if nobody jumps into this open panel in like the next few minutes, 10 minutes, 15 maybe. I don't know. I'll probably just shut it down. I'm really only doing this for you guys because to be consistent, my brain is a little fried just trying to keep up with Dr. Carrier, but I can touch on a few things that we talked about in that show. But they're things that I've already talked about a number of times on this channel. Ultimately, I base objective morality at a fundamental level on equality, right? And that we are a social species. Cooperation is paramount to our survival and to our flourishing. To live the best life that we want, we need self-respect. So I build my moral system off the virtues from Aristotelian virtue, the golden mean, which I talked about that with Dr. Carrier today. I do also, you can get there if you really are religious and religion's a big part of your life. I always encourage people to look into something like Buddhism, get rid of the supernatural, the God concepts and things like that, and just stick to more of a philosophy of religion, so to speak. And in Buddhism, you get to what's called the middle way. And it starts with what they call the Four Noble Truths. Those are the basic building blocks that get you to the Eightfold Path. And then once you understand what the Eightfold Path is getting to, which talks about things like right mind, right action, right speech, right work, so on and so forth, then you get to ultimately what becomes the middle way. And so this is very similar, as we talked about in the show with Dr. Carrier, to Aristotelian virtue, which is based on the golden mean, that middle ground between having too much or too little of something. And I think that does simplify it as much as I know how to articulate it to people. And I think at the end of the day, empathy gets you there, like true empathy, when you can really understand how your neighbor feels and you can relate to that and you put yourself in their shoes. Then you could understand objective morality or morality in general. What do you want to call it, objective or subjective? I don't really care. But you can understand the correct moral action, right? And I think it's important. We touched on this in the discussion with Dr. Carrier. I believe it was when we were live. It might have been when he was in the backstage. I can't remember because he and I talked for about 15 minutes or so offline. Oh, that coffee is so nice and hot. But I think people have a fundamental misunderstanding of what morality actually is. Once they start breaking down the arguments, morality is not a goal. That's not the goal. The goal is going to be something like cooperation, for example, right? Morality is the action. So once the goal is selected, a goal at cooperation, once that goal is selected, then you can get to an action of how do I achieve the goal, which is how you can get to objective morality. And this, we didn't really touch on this. Oh, I meant to have him go over Hume. God damn it. I do have something that he wrote to me, which I could read. In fact, maybe I should do that. I forgot. That was a huge question I was going to have Dr. Carrier explain to everybody. But fortunately, he actually, where is this? Let me see if I can find it here. That would be a good thing to do to fill the air real quick. Oh, Skyworks, so good to see you, brother. Okay, are they already? Oh, missing mod. No, that's definitely not true. I don't even want to highlight. That's so funny. This is missing mod right here. She is she says she has zero empathy. Well, we know that's not true. She's actually very kind-hearted. A little crazy about her position on evolution, right? Evolution, as she calls it. But other than that, no, I think missing mod's amazing. So good to see Skyworks out there. I really enjoy. I've been bumping into you all over the place. I think I see you. I might be wrong, but I think I see you on DNW's channel. I've seen you here, and I feel like there's one other place at least that I run into you, Skyworks, and I don't know. I'm not recalling it right now, but I do love to see you out there in the community. You always have such great things to say. You also have a really good sense of humor too. You post some great stuff. So let me see if I can share a screen, because that will be something beneficial to not that button. I'm so bad at this stuff, you guys. Where do I get the fucking? How do I even work this shit? Oh, share screen. There we go. I need that. Objective. Protest. No. None of this is right. Where isn't the... Oh, that's because I'm looking at the wrong thing. A window, maybe? Ooh. Will that get me there? This might work. Okay, let me try and minimize this. Let me bring this up. I don't know why I can't... I am such a disaster. Let me see here. Okay. Oh, here we go. That's the what I want to... Okay. Boom. Am I making this work? Oh, I'm doing it. Okay. Perfect. All right. Did anybody join? Nobody joined yet. So let me go ahead and go over this. So I'll highlight, I'll enlarge this. Okay. So one of the pushbacks that I get, in fact, every single time I talk about objective versus subjective morality, people who push back and think that morality is subjective or that you can't get objective morality from a secular position, either way, they always cite what's come to be known as Hume's guillotine. Okay. And they all have a fundamental, and I mean no disrespect here, but they have a fundamental misunderstanding of what Hume's guillotine actually is. First of all, Hume didn't call it the guillotine, and nor did Hume actually say you cannot get an is from an ought, or I'm sorry, an ought from an is. This is a complete misunderstanding of what Hume's argument actually was. And I'll break this down in Dr. Carrier's words, his own words here. This is in response. He watched my video I did on in favor of objective morality. A lot of you guys saw that video, left some great comments. That was probably my most watched video, my most watched long form video anyway. Definitely the most comments that were left. I think there's over 100 comments on that particular video, but Dr. Carrier watched it and sent me a critique of it, a very in-depth critique, which I really appreciated. Okay, so what they do. Okay, here's this section on Hume. So he says, I'm sort of on the right path, which is a compliment, I guess, considering how bad my arguments are. He says, but it seems to conflate your own points with Hume's a little and ends up with a mash while getting one minor point about Kant wrong. He says, one thing I would usually point out is that Hume never called it a guillotine or law. That's a late misinterpretation of Hume's point. But you are right that Hume's point was not that there is no way to get an ought from an is. He never says that anywhere. But that priests and populists had not derived their oughts from an is, which is a crucial distinction. One is contingent, the other modal. Hume then goes on to derive oughts from is. His entire moral sympathies theory is actually built on oughts from is. So he clearly did not believe one could not do that. He merely said his opponents hadn't. A confusion arises when you make it more about God and the moral argument. Hume doesn't frame it like that. He doesn't discuss divine command theory specifically. His targets do include priests, but also philosophers who attempt to assert secular morals. His target is vulgar or 6 symptoms of morality, not just religious symptoms. And by vulgar, he means lay, pop, street, everyday, not gross or crass. His point is that moralists, his point meaning Hume's point, moralists, no matter who they are, go around asserting moralities they never justify. So his solution is to try and justify his. It was not to assert none could be justified. That's the guillotine, and that's the exact opposite of what Hume actually argued. And he's got a reference in here from Stanford edu entries on Hume and moral theory, which I should probably see if I can link that. Oh, I can copy this. Let me see if I can actually... that's not... No. Why is it only giving me paste options? Okay, because I can't edit this document. Okay, well, never mind that. All right, so likewise, Kant did not introduce the idea that hypothetical imperatives derive an ought from an is. You've got that wrong. Meaning I got that wrong, because I thought Kant came up with that. But apparently that's been around for a long time, going all the way back to Aristotle. So Kant did coin the term the hypothetical imperative. But before that, the idea was voiced in philosophy under different words from Hobbes, going all the way back to Aristotle and Democritus. Hence, Kant takes that for granted as something already widely agreed and approved, and just decides to label it. That's why it's so weird for later thinkers to have gotten Hume so wrong on this. The idea they attribute to Hume would have been laughable and considered ridiculous to not only Hume, but any intellectual of his era. They all knew perfectly well how oughts derive from an is in conditional logic. Hume's point was not that no one knew how to do this. His point was that popular moralists weren't doing it. He then proceeds to do it. He derives oughts from a system of is statements about human sentiments and their ensuing logic and causal relations. What Kant objected to was how Hume reduced morals to hypotheticals that could be false or dangerously risk being subverted by pragmatism. So Kant struggled to invent a new relation, which he called the categorical imperative. That's the only new thing in Kant. But ironically, when Kant then got to doing what Hume said he needed to do to also get that ought from an is, he ended up reducing his categoricals to hypotheticals via the everyone wants to be this sort of person discourse. But he still recognized that oughts can be reduced to an is, and that he had to do that to avoid Hume's criticism. So no one had any notion of Hume's guillotine then, not even people responding to Hume. Kant knew what Hume meant, and that the problem was not no one can do this, but the putative dangers of doing it the only way everyone knew how, including Hume, who did exactly that. Kant was not solving the how do you derive an ought from an is problem. He was solving the how Hume did that is scary problem and trying to figure some other way to do it. That there were ways to do it, though that was never in dispute, and Kant never has to argue that. So that is... Oh, I should have shared that with you guys the whole time I was reading that. Let me just show you guys what I was reading from. Has anybody joined the stage yet? Is the link not pinned? I apologize if that's not... so let me just... Okay, I'm still... Yeah, so, okay. So just so you guys could see as a reference here, this is the document that I was just reading from. This is from Dr. Carrier's own words in a document he sent to me that in response to my... argument for objective morality. Oh, there's a sister right there. All right. Let me get somebody important up here. She doesn't have to listen to me rambling on about this. So that's where I got that from. Dr. Carrier, if you want to look at his work on this subject, maybe I have to enlarge this maybe. Look at, this is the link right here. plato.stanford.edu/entries/Hume-moral #IO weird things I don't even know what those are. Unequal sign, colon, unequal sign, colon, I guess. Text equals other %20 interpreters. And I can't copy and paste that because this is I can't edit this because this is Dr. Carrier's own work. So, all right. Let me get rid of this damn thing. There we go. And let me enlarge this. Okay, Robin, the floor is yours. How are you doing, sister? Did you enjoy the conversation? Can't hear anything you're saying if you're talking.
I'm muted. Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, I should know he's a busy man. I was kind of hoping, I would kind of like to ask him some questions, but I realized why he didn't get to stay around and answer them. But that was a great guest. Like,
that was definitely really, as far as my small channel goes, that was like, I was way out over my skis on that one to be able to land him as a guest. I'm really excited about. I don't know if I'll be able to top that guest. I have another guest who is an author of some books on religious trauma syndrome. And he said he'd be interested in coming onto my channel, but my schedule filled up so fast. So I'm kind of at a point to where, do I want to bump somebody in place of this author, or do I want to just see if this author wants to get together in 2 months? Because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I don't want to make it seem like, oh, I'm bumping you because you're not, a famous person or whatever. So I'm kind of wrestling with how to handle that exactly. But yeah, Dr. Carrier is probably going to be the biggest guest that I'll land maybe ever on this channel. Who knows? He's a big name.
Yeah, you get like you'll get views from that engagement for a while, like beyond what we had watching today. You'll be getting views.
That'll be nice.
So that's good.
That will be nice. I'd like to get that message out there. Like I said, I'm not trying to be a big famous YouTuber or necessarily grow the channel for those kind of purposes, but just to be able to get the message out, because it's a message that I think is important and it's something that I believe in. And I do think that there is a purpose, a utility, I should say, to understanding how we work with moral reasoning. And so hopefully that will benefit somebody at some point, as they're wrestling with it.
Yeah. I was interested because, I guess that maybe I've never read none of Carrier's work. So from what I kind of gathered there at the end, he's not saying that Jesus did not exist really, but he's saying that the biblical Jesus is a myth. Is that kind of what I got? That did I misunderstand that? That maybe there was a actual person who was crucified that may be represented by this biblical Jesus. Is that kind of what?
Yes, that would be the simplest way to say it. He uses Bayesian. I don't know if you know what Bayes theory is. Are
Yeah,
you familiar with Bayes?
yeah, yeah. Bayesian
Okay.
reason.
Yep, absolutely. So he uses Bayes' theorem to come up with a percentage, what he thinks a likelihood is, and I think he gives the historical Jesus like a 33, a 1 in 3 chance, a 33% chance of actually being of there being a guy. So he doesn't say that it's impossible. He certainly doesn't say it's impossible. But what he does say is impossible is the Jesus that everybody's talking about, that people think they know, that you get from the Gospels. That Jesus is all mythology, and he also shows how Paul, the earliest source, doesn't even think that Jesus was walking and talking. Paul may have believed at one point or another, possibly, but I don't think Carrier even holds that position. I think Carrier believes that Paul comes to the Jesus belief literally through revelation and visions, hallucinations, that type of a thing, which matches up with what you see in Paul. So this is how these, like, think of any other god in the ancient Near East, right? Like Dionysus or whatever, Romulus or whatever it might be. You know what I mean? These gods, nobody's saying, "Oh, I really walked and talked with this god." These stories are just anthropomorphized, that these gods do these kind of human things like walking and talking and throwing lightning bolts or whatever the fuck it is. But nobody really actually thinks these guys are walking around per se. It's not a literal thing. It's meant to be more typological or
Yeah,
archetypal, if you will. You know what I mean? It's not like, but when it came to the Jesus thing, suddenly you get this shift. Like Jesus was really literally walking around, but that's not what Paul, he doesn't think that's what Paul was actually saying. That comes from the Gospels, that's when they start to write these kind of biographical type narratives. When it starts with, I think most scholars think Mark is the first, and then Matthew and Luke build off of Mark. And so that didn't start until after the destruction of the temple in around 70, right? So this is way late stuff, that way late development.
yeah. Well, see, I found that interesting. Like, I found a stream, and I can't remember what channel it was on back several years ago. On did the Greeks actually believe like that these gods, in these gods, like and that was kind of the argument that they made, that even though these narratives under the Greeks have all these stories about this and everything, that actually the citizens may not have believed like these things just like as same. I mean, that these were, it was really kind of a weird relationship they had with the gods as far as belief. And so that would make sense, that would carry on into around the same time, that would carry on into other cultures like that. And I think we kind of have maybe lost what kind of view they had on gods, and like put a different spin on gods now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, some of the things that I actually have studied myself, having studied this in college, and I'm not a scholar in this area, but I have studied this in world religions and Christianity to a certain degree. And the gods that turned into the Abrahamic gods, they come from the Canaanite pantheon of gods, and people don't seem to realize that the Israelites, who are the Jews, who were the Israelites, right? They actually were Hebrews, and before that, they were actually Canaanites. They came from the land of Canaanite. They're a Semitic people, and
Yes.
so the Canaanite tribes were Semitic tribes, and so they all had the same origin in Mesopotamia. And the Canaanite pantheon had a Yahweh God. It had a whole pantheon of gods. And so Yahweh was one of the, I believe, if I remember right, it's one of the 70, because Asherah and El were the two high gods. And then Asherah was El's consort, right? The female deity. Then these are both Asherah and El were capital G gods. Everything underneath them would be then their children, their lowercase g gods. And Yahweh was one of the children. Well, according to the narrative in Canaan, if I remember correctly, Yahweh ultimately does something. He kind of, in one version of this, and there's many versions because each tribe kind of latches on to one or more of the gods and takes it with them. So these gods become localized, which is why you see threads of this in the Old Testament. So, for example, like with the Ark of the Covenant, they needed the Ark of the Covenant because they needed a physical representation that carried the God along with them, because the God is localized. It wasn't this idea that this God is omnipresent or anything like that. That was never a thing. Not until you get to Zoroastrianism with Ahura Mazda, which is then heavily influenced Second Temple Judaism. So you see this shift, but that's way late. That did not how this whole thing started. So anyway, Yahweh subdues El and ends up marrying his own mother, which is a little weird. And then Yashara becomes Yahweh's consort. And Baal is also part of this pantheon. And so when you start looking at the Old Testament, you see threads of this. You see Baal, you see Asherah, and you see Yahweh, you see El. And Marduk, I believe, comes from Babylonian pantheon. And you see that Marduk gets pulled into this. So you see all these names at the oldest stories. And then as you start to get closer and closer to the New Testament, which would be to the turn of the millennia, right, from what we call the before the Common Era to the Common Era, you have the Babylonian exile. So now here's where first Isaiah is starting to try to explain why are the Jews being the diaspora of the Jews, and why is this happening to us? Why has our God failed us? And so they start to make apologetics. This is first Isaiah. Then second Isaiah, which starts at chapter 39 or 40, I think 39 to 55. Suddenly now this is the Persian period, where you start to hear about King Cyrus, because the Persians defeated the Babylonians. They allowed the Jews to return, rebuild the temple. So then you see this huge shift in theology and the way the whole thing is structured, because Zoroastrianism, which was monotheistic to a degree, people get confused. Is it monotheistic or dualistic? But I don't want to get into all that. But anyways, it's Ahura Mazda is the only uncreated being. So it's the monotheism there. So then that influences Second Temple Judaism. And they're like, oh, this Yahweh God actually is El, and Asherah is just a fake idol. And so all this starts to kind of getting whitewashed into what then feeds into what we now see as Christianity. But Christianity is influenced by Stoicism, which made a huge influence in Rome by the time the turn of the millennia, right? With like Seneca and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you also see the influences of Eastern mythology, which comes from like Hinduism and Buddhism, because the Silk Roads, there was a lot of trading going on back and forth now from all the way from China to Rome because of the Silk Road trade routes, right? So with that trading of goods and services came the belief systems. And so now Christianity is this amalgamation of all this stuff. So it's a really fascinating history to it all. And I love to study it all. But when you actually break it all down, this idea that this Jesus is the son of this one God, this God created the world and stuff like that, is just so broken on so many levels, and takes bits and pieces from all these different religions that were much older, these different traditions that are much older. And the religious people, they don't teach you this in church. A lot of times they don't teach it to you in seminary either, because they don't want people knowing this. They want people believing a certain thing. So to really get this information, you have to get it from a secular source, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you talking about the like his marrying his mom or whatever. See, like in the Greek, and even probably the Roman too, but I know more about I know that they transferred the gods and changed their names from, in the Greek to the Roman. And a lot of them carry like a cross though. But I haven't studied near as much of like that part of the Romans. But the Greeks, there is a lot of that kind of thing. Like, Zeus and Hera were a brother and sister. You had a lot of that kind of like, but in the gods, there wasn't as much an idea of like that kind of incestuous relationship as I guess, because, they're not really seen as like, as sharing blood, as much as they are. What is it? The Greek gods had, I can't remember what was that called. They had that was their blood, their life blood. I can't even think what it is now.
No, I'm drawing a blank. But you're right, though. The incestuous relationships, you see that in Egyptian mythology as well. And you also see the Ankh, right? The cross type symbol that actually goes back to that as well. And you're absolutely right about that. In fact, pharaohs oftentimes would marry a family relative. It's all weird, you know what I mean? Like the whole the incestuous stuff does go way back into history, wanting to keep bloodlines pure, or depending on how they looked at things and stuff like that.
Yep. Well, you can say hi to our guest here.
Yes, Jill, welcome. You're always welcome to stop by. It's nice to see you. I hope you enjoyed the stream with Dr. Carrier. I'm sure that was fun for you.
Oh yeah, I did catch towards the end of, but I'm really only interested in positive claims that skeptics make, not innuendo or conspiracy theories. But um, you you mentioned something a few seconds ago, um, about most Christians don't realize this when they read the Bible.
Yeah,
What
that's been my experience.
exactly?
Now that's anecdotal, obviously based on my own experience, but yeah.
Well, what exactly is it that Christians don't realize? Because I'm a Christian, so I would like to know what I didn't, what did I miss?
Well, the Christians that I interact with don't realize that Yahweh was part of a different pantheon way before um, there was even an Israel or Judah. That
Okay, yeah, you would be
those
right
people,
about
those
that.
Semitic people, brought that with them from
Yeah,
Canaan. Yeah,
yeah, that's something you would need to learn in Bible school, as I did. That so it doesn't have to be a secular source. I went to an actual Bible school. It's not a secular source, and learned that information. So yes, that's we don't
excellent.
have a problem with that.
That's
The scholars call it literary subversion, which means that this was purposely done, not to borrow or steal in a natural sense, but it's a retooling of what's called literary subversion. It's a retooling of familiar ancient Near Eastern motifs and applying them in a polemical way to the true God. So that's why you have the backdrop of the Canaanite religion, the Baal cycle, Ur, the god of the Chaldeans. You have Elion. Uh, God takes on all these names. This is a purposeful attack against the gods of Canaan to say that they're not God or they don't have those powers or authority. I do. That's all. So we learned this in Bible school, and which is why we don't have a problem with it. Which is why when the skeptics come later and say, "Look, these gods existed in the past," it's not really that apologetic. That atheist apologetic doesn't really work
Well,
on
Jill,
those who
I,
know that.
Jill, is it though? Like, is it just as reasonable to assume that people did this in a
Yeah,
way?
yeah, they did it on purpose. They
I know, but
purposely took
to
these ancient
legitimize,
gods and retooled them. Yeah.
yeah, to legitimize their god just because, I mean, like when you said
Mhm.
the true God, okay,
Yeah,
that's
it's
possible, or
common. It's common in that region. That's how we know it was done purposeful.
yeah. So,
It was
but so it could be, it just could be that if I have this God that I think exists, then I do this so I can delegitimize this other
Mhm.
person's God. That doesn't actually make either one of them real.
No, no, no one is trying to demonstrate that God is real to anyone, and myself especially. And I got banned from Taco's channel because I refuse to convince him God exists.
Yeah,
But if you
and
make a positive claim about the Bible, then that's where I will step in and say, nope, that's not the intention of the author. The intention of the author was not to copy and not to borrow in a neutral sense. Um, Rather than that, this is actually purposeful. If you want to call it borrowing, that's fine. But scholars actually have a name for it. It's called literary subversion. It's actually how they communicated and how they attacked other religions in the ancient Near East by basically, for example, if Jesus were to come today and the same thing were to happen today, and God were to invade our space, let's say he were to become or come down. In this case, he came down, informed the Israelites, and you know the whole story. But let's say he were to do that today, he would subvert another group of so-called gods. Let's say the MCU, and he would say, "No, that's not Superman. I am Superman." And you would say, "Oh, the God of the Bible, 2,000 years from now, you'd say the God of the Bible was really the Superman God. He really got that from this." No, the point was is that you're all of these gods that you created in the earth are nothing. I'm the one who creates the snow. I'm the one that creates the rain. I'm the one that creates the thunder, not Thor. I'm the one who does this. I'm the one who does it. That was the whole point. And if you read enough of the Old Testament, that pattern will be obvious what God is doing. Obvious. It's obvious to me, at least, when I read the Bible. And then when I got to school and learned, not from a secular source, then it made a lot more sense. But I think that should be a natural reading of the text. It should be obvious that's what he's doing. I mean, he calls himself the many-breasted one. He doesn't have many breasts. El Shaddai, he so obviously he is doing something a little bit more, you know, I hate to be insulting, but you gotta dig a little deeper than, oh well, it's just one of the Canaanite gods, and it's just, you know, God being or just one of the Canaanite gods developing into this God of the Bible.
Well, I mean, you're
No.
kind of you're looking at this from your perspective of belief in God, which is a presupposition, I would say that to where you are, like, you look at, and I'm not saying that necessarily is a bad thing. I think that all humans have certain presuppositions when they in beliefs, but like if you are looking at that from a position to where you didn't have the presupposition that there was this one true God, that this may look like a totally different thing, you know, like you may have a different perspective on it.
Well, this is Michael Heiser's perspective. This is, yeah, if you read The Unseen Realm, if you read his book, this is Mettinger, another huge scholar. I mean, these things have been, we can go all the way back to the 70s. We can go to Frank Moore Cross, and this has been a part of the apologetic, if you want to call it that. But Israelite poetry preserves older Western Semitic, you know, mythological language. It has the same structure. It doesn't make it mythology, but it offers the same sort of structure that we would find in that region during that time. Just like the Ten Commandments is structured after the Code of Hammurabi. It has the similar structure, like our Ten Commandments has a similar structure, but totally different laws. Same thing going on here. So, I mean, what else was God supposed to do? If he's subverting that area, that region, in that time, then he's going to take over the McDonald's and the Burger King. So we can't say, wait, why is he calling himself these gods? Well, he's subverting. He is taking over, basically, and that seems to be the most logical, you know, interpretation, at least.
Well, let's let. I think Chris joined next, and then we'll let Max. Both these guys can introduce themselves. Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then whatever you have to touch on. It's an open panel right now. There's no real topic on hand, so whatever you want to discuss is perfectly fine. It's always good to see you, brother.
Yo, yeah, I'm Chris Moore, but anyhow, not my real name. But anyways, I'm just kind of have a question for Jill, though. Why do you have to treat quote unquote secularism, or just the fact of being secular, as if it's a dirty word, or even though it is do not touch type of thing to you?
Well, I think it is in the way they approach the text, and this is a perfect example.
No, but
they don't consider scholarship at all. Many of them, not all, but they just come up with these sensational headliners. The God of the Bible stole from the Canaanite myth. They come up with these epic titles that are misleading. So for that reason, I don't avoid liberal scholarship, just to know what the arguments are and how to refute them.
Well, liberal or whatever, it's not. That's what I'm
critical
asking.
Scholarship. Critical scholarship, it's called. But it used to be called liberal scholarship.
Whatever. Well, my question is, why are you treating secularism, in every sense of the word, to all of this, as something that's dirty.
Something that's dirty. um, I don't know. I don't know what you mean by I'm treating it like something that's dirty. Do I think secularism is a good thing? No.
Because
No.
every time I'm just kind of okay, and it probably is a presupposition. I don't
It
know,
is dirty.
but it's just that every time that I hear apologists kind of try to use the secularist, it's basically another word that you use to say the others,
The same thing
the
with
ones that should not be named.
same thing
Anyway,
with the Christians. You say a Christian apologist. The Christian apologist did this or said that, and that's often
nope.
meaning
I'm just
that they're
asking.
discounting what he's saying because he's a Christian apologist. So the same thing applies both ways. But the difference is we're able to demonstrate. You're simply not. You're simply going to give us a headliner. You're going to say Yahweh did this or Yahweh did that, and then when we go to the text or when we consult actual scholars, they say, well, yeah, there is Yahweh is called El Shaddai. Yahweh is called the many-breasted one. But why? Why does he do this? On purpose. Over and over and over and over. It's like he just got a list. He just give me a list of all the gods, and I'm going to somewhere in this text, I'm going to say I am that God. He's doing it on purpose. Can't you tell that? I mean, so what's the purpose? What's the reason why he's doing it? Is he doing it because he wants you to now think he is the Yahweh or God? Is he doing it because he's always been Yahweh? He's always been that Canaanite myth? Obviously, he's doing it for another purpose. So I think my argument makes sense. I don't think there is a counter argument that can make more sense than that. The fact that he chose this one God over this Canaanite myth over another, maybe because this one Canaanite God is better than the other. Maybe Baal sounds better than Yahweh. But the fact of the matter is he chose both. He chose all of them. And that's why he has 1,000 names. Hint.
Let's.
I mean, it's obvious to me.
AOE, let me say something before you go on them real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
Chris, I think that it comes down to that this kind of information is perceived as a personal attack on their identity, and I think that because of that they feel that they have to resist this attack on their identity. That's my theory on it.
I don't see it as a personal attack. If someone calls me a conservative, I don't get upset. But when I call you a liberal, you get upset. Not you per se. So it could be seen as a personal attack, but I think deeply rooted in that feeling that you're being attacked is the truth to the fact is that being a liberal or a liberal in general, is wrong. Because if you didn't think it was wrong, you would not look at it as an attack. If somebody said, look at that conservative over there, I'm like, yeah, sure. If someone said, look at that Christian over there, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Raise my hand.
It doesn't bother me when you call me a liberal. I'm a proud liberal.
Let's move around the room here. I definitely want to get to Max and then BS Lewis. What an honor it is to have you stop by. I think this is the first time you've been on my show, and I'm such a fan of your work. And I always tell people I speak very highly of you, brother. You do really good stuff, very creative with the cartoons and stuff like that. So I definitely want to get to BS Lewis before he has to take off. Max, you're up next, brother.
Hey, what's up, man? Max Stout from Architects of Humanity. Yeah, I sent you an email too. I didn't know if you got it, Objective.
Send it today, or was it?
No, it was like the last time I was on, maybe a week, 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Let me just check. I'll look for it while you talk here.
From Wisdom Radio, you'll see it.
Okay, I'll look for it.
Yeah, I wanted to know. I think JIL was saying something about the Code of Hammurabi and then his 10 Commandments. What are the differences between those two?
Well, there are several. I was just pointing out the fact that they have the same or similar structure, just like the system of servitude in the Bible, although vastly different. For one, you couldn't kidnap someone and force them into that system; they had to willingly want to work. So although it's the same system, It's vastly different on how it's applied and how people are treated within that system. So the same thing goes with the code of Hammurabi. Its structure is the same. Like there are 10 commandments, there are 10 Bill of Rights. So the structure is the same, but they are very different. What those differences are, I mean, we can Google that. I mean,
Well, I figured you'd know,
Sure.
being that you're basing your life on the belief, right?
well, I can do a comparative analysis, but
No, it's
I'm
all
sure
right.
there.
If you haven't done it already, it's okay. I just figured you
Well,
would know
I
that.
have, but that was 20 years ago when it
But you
actually
don't
mattered.
remember it, though.
When it actually mattered when I was first
Well, if it's
first
your
a
life
believer.
belief, I would think you would remember it.
Well, no,
But it's okay. No,
not.
hey.
It's not something that I would retain.
Mhm.
It's not information that I would retain, but I can look it up for you. I mean, I'm
No,
sure
you don't
I
have
looked
to look it up
30
for
years ago.
yourself, not
I'm
for
sure.
me.
Well, 30 years ago I did when it was
But you don't
pertinent.
remember it.
It's not something that I would retain or something that's important, but it seems to be important to you. So
No,
let's
no,
look it up.
it's important
What
to
are
you because it's your life's belief and you don't know it.
And I did that research when I was a young lad, and it's not
Well,
something
wouldn't
I
you
felt like I
remember
had
that
to
if it was
retain.
so
There's other
important in your
information.
life today?
There's other information that I need to retain.
No.
that's more
Wouldn't you
important. That's not
remember
how-
that if it was
No.
so important today?
It's not important for me today. It was when I was a young lad and I was seeking
But
the
you
truth.
still believe in that faith
When I
today?
was seeking, hold on. When I was seeking the truth, I'm no longer seeking. So I don't have to
So
look
you
up
found the truth?
what the difference. Yeah. We
What
found
is
the
it?
truth. Yeah. So let's
What is
just
it?
look it up now. What are the differences
No. What is the truth? You said you found the truth.
between what the Bible teaches is the truth?
What is the
the-
truth?
What the Bible teaches. is
I'd
the
like to
truth.
know specifically.
Well, give me a scenario and I'll tell you what the
Just
truth.
tell
of
me
that-
what
in
the
that
truth is.
scenario
You said you found the truth, right? Wouldn't you be able to state a truth?
Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to him except through. So comes to the Father or gets to heaven except through him. That's
So
the truth.
ideology is your answer. I have found an ideology, and that's it.
Which is
Sounds
true.
about right.
Which is true. An ideology, which is true. Yes.
Which is true. Wait, no, your ideology is what you believe to be true. It's not what
What
necessarily.
I can demonstrate to be true. What I can demonstrate to be true.
Okay, demonstrate it.
Well, give me what exactly
You're
do you
telling
want
me.
How do you want me to
just
demonstrate?
Told me a truth. Now
Okay.
prove to me it's true.
Okay. The Bible is historical and evidential. What
Who wrote it?
corresponds to the ground, what corresponds to what we find in the ground, corresponds to what we find in the pages of scripture. And I'll add this. Since we cannot dig up everything to prove everything in the Bible true, because that would virtually be impossible. There are people living on
So
those
then the Bible
lands.
cannot be fully true.
Hold on. What we can say is that everything we have this dug up has never discredited any historical biblical claim. Okay.
Which
demolished
version of the
the false.
Bible are you talking about?
I'm sorry. That is
Which
just demonstrably
version?
false.
Which version? The
Demonstrably
Gideons, the Mormon,
false.
the King James?
All you would need was one archaeological find to
No,
discredit.
I'm asking you which version of the book
But those
do
who
you
said it was
believe
false.
in? Like, is there a specific type of Bible? Good News Bible? NIV?
The Bible.
Are you telling me
Which-
any Bible?
Which Bible? Any translation would suffice.
No, I'm
Any
saying which
English
one
translation.
do you read? Which one
Do I
you
prefer? Which one do I prefer? Depends on what I'm reading. If I'm reading the Psalms, I prefer a more pithy type of language, like an Old English, King James. If
All
I'm
right,
reading
so it's
letters
basically
to Paul,
it's your
then
belief.
I
Okay.
would prefer a more contemporary version of the Bible, like the
So you're admitting
Living
to
Translation.
nitpicking and cherry picking.
Nitpicking. I
Your-
said I would
like your
prefer
Bible verses.
I'm not nitpicking. It's different translations. Do you know the difference between a dynamic translation and a word for word translation or not?
Okay, in the old days,
Cherry picking.
the difference
You don't know what cherry
between
picking is, do you?
yes,
That's what you
I
guys do. You guys cherry pick verses out of
Nope.
context.
Nope.
I'm simply saying I prefer a more pithy language,
Not-
Old English type of style.
You're jumping back.
I love the language of a person like someone who reads the Bible like a Max McLean. I love his accent.
Well, who
That's
wrote
all
it?
I'm saying here. I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you know anybody, any author who wrote the Bible? Like any guy? Is it attributed to anybody?
Do I know the authors personally? What do you mean?
No. Well, come on, man. Yeah, all right. If you want to jump around like that, then
I am saying, yeah, come on, man. It's an ancient document. It's an ancient
Otherwise,
document.
you're a
Okay.
heretic.
You know what it just reminds me of? It reminds me of Nietzsche's saying.
Okay, it's
Nobody
an ancient
converts. Hold on a second.
So what do you
Nobody
mean?
converts to a religion. You have to be sick enough to accept it mentally.
That's a nice claim. So
Well,
what do you mean by
you're
that? What do you
proving
mean?
the point.
Explain.
You're proving
Explain
the
what
point.
you mean. You're proving my
the
point. You're proving my point. Being vague
It's
on
just
purpose
like
to then
two
say,
steps
"Oh,
beside
you're
me.
wrong." I'm being vague on purpose, so then I can say, "Oh, you're wrong,"
No,
and
you're
then move the
being
goalposts.
vague so you
So what
can
do you
say
mean?
you're right. That's
So
why
what
you're
do you
being
mean? So
vague.
explain. I'm asking for
All right,
details.
well, hold on. We're going to work our way around. I don't want
I'm
to
asking for details.
I just want to work our way around the room to be respectful to everybody. BS Lewis, you've got the floor, brother. Please introduce people to yourself and to your channel. And just to remind everybody who's listening here, I will definitely be linking participants' channels to the description of the video. And I know I have BS Lewis's link. I know I have Robin's link. Jill, I think I did finally find your link. I'll try to get that in there. Max, I did not find that email for some. It sounds familiar, but I could not find it, and I'm so sorry if it went to spam or something, or I deleted it accidentally. But yeah, I'm definitely down to get a correspondence from you if you want to set up a show or something like that. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm just.
Is it the email on your page, on your YouTube page, or you want to put it in the?
It is. Yeah, it's in the description of my video.
Okay,
my
channel. That's when I wrote. I'll write it again.
Okay, it should when you know how it is when you type in the Gmail, it should come up with a picture. It should be that tree logo.
Okay.
So it doesn't have the tree logo, then you don't have the right one. But it is definitely on my description of my channel. And I apologize. I don't mean to be inconsiderate. If you sent it to me and I missed it somehow, I do apologize for that. So BS Lewis, yeah, definitely, you got the floor, brother.
Right on. What's up, everybody? How are you guys doing?
Yo.
Fucking amazing. Did you catch the show with Dr. Carrier today?
I did not. I just got back from shopping.
If I was any better, it'd be two of me.
So yeah, I'm BS Lewis. Hi, everybody. I'm pretty familiar with everybody. Hopefully, everybody knows who I am. But for those that don't, I do cartoons and I do atheist humor, focusing on Bible and morality a lot of the time. But I was having an interesting conversation with my wife today, Mrs. Lewis, and I was running through different aspects of my problem of evil with her. And I think I came to a logical conclusion I thought was worthy to bring to the panel of Big Brains and Jill. And I thought,
yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought, I'll run this past you. I think that the conclusion of the problem of evil and the problem of creation is that God is a solipsist. And I don't see any logical way around that.
Well, that ties into like non-dualism and panpsychism or pantheism. I mean, that's really actually quite fascinating.
What is that? Explain what that is.
Solipsism is what's a lot of atheists get accused of a lot of time. It's where you think you're the only thing in the existence that truly exists. And I think that the problem of evil, the only logical explanation for evil existing in a world of the classical theist God or the Christian God or whatever, is that he himself is a solipsist.
So we don't,
and that in this case, God's the only thing that exists. You're an image of God, which means he's playing with dolls.
You're made in the image of God.
Yeah, you're a creation. You're a created being. You're not a natural being. You're artificial. You're like him playing dolls with somebody. He's like, oh, here's my G.I. Joe and my Barbie. You know,
we are created. We are beings, right?
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying.
The solipsist position is that it's essentially, now there's different versions of it, so it can be different depending on who's using it. But ultimately, what it really boils down to, technically speaking, is that all there is one mind. It's your mind. You don't even have a physical body, because all the senses, your touch, taste, sight, everything, all your physical senses are only boiled down to electrical signals inside the brain anyway. So the reason it can't be solved in philosophy, it's considered the one of the few unsolvable problems. And it's because you can't ever get outside of your own brain, and all of your senses go through this process. So you can't really, even if I'm looking at you guys on the screen right now, that's only happening through electrical signals inside my brain. So I cannot justify epistemically that it's not just an illusion or an image inside my brain. The only thing the solipsist can confirm for sure is that you're having an experience, a cognitive experience. Even your own physical body can't be justified epistemically through solipsism. And it's true, it's unsolvable.
Objective. I just sent you another email just, to make sure. I just said, hi, it's me.
Hey, let me just double check while you're here. And I appreciate your patience with that, brother. I'm very busy in real life stuff. So if
definitely,
Wisdom Radio, there it is. Okay, so I just put a lock on it, so I won't lose that message. Okay.
Yes, we'll link up and see what's a good day, and stuff.
Absolutely.
I think with solace, when I look at the brain, only like people that think it's only the brain that produces the mind, it doesn't make sense scientifically, because the mind doesn't have a weight. You can weigh the brain. The brain as the receiver theory, that's one that makes kind of sense. When you look at cases of amnesia, when you look at cases of animal intelligence, when we look at, like, it seems from my research that there's some type of intelligence like in between things, like some people in their belief might call it the ether, but there's like some intelligent force. I'm not saying it's religious. It's some type of creational force that I see. When people say we're created in the image of their monotheistic God, I wonder, well, why do we all look different? That's, they don't have an explanation. It's so deep into just a belief. It, like I said before, it reminds me of evolution. You can't question the doctrine. If you find science that opposes it, they'll try to change the scientific evidence to fit the theory instead of changing the theory to fit the evidence, which brings us into the unknown.
I would say that you're talking to the wrong Christians. If that question, that simple question.
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to Objective Ethics about what he said about solipsism.
So I'm just speaking as an open panel.
Well, then, all right. For you, why do we all look different if we're created? Does God got many faces? Is he man and a woman?
You're misunderstanding my point on this.
That question was not answered in all of your inquiries, then you're surrounding yourself with the wrong Christians.
Why do we look different if we're creating
quickly? But I want to answer another question that was asked. Three questions.
Before we do, we never really let B.S. Lewis. He just explained solipsism. He didn't really get a chance to lay out his case. I just want to be fair to everybody, give everybody equal time. I'd sorry to cut you guys off, but B.S. Lewis, you still have the floor until you want to turn it over to open conversation here.
Yeah, no issues. I just want to flesh it out a little more, because first, let's think about what the God is described of. The philosophy God is a disembodied mind, right? So he has no external reference point to himself. If we're talking in a psychological sense, solipsism is accused of being one of the loneliest mental debilitating things you can get into, because even if you're interacting with people, you either think that they're fake or you think that they're creations of your own mind. And it goes into the question of the problem of evil. Why would there be anything God doesn't want in his creation? I think the psychological grounding for that would be to keep him under the illusion that he is not the only thing existing. So it's to almost fool himself by not giving himself a bunch of yes men and robots, but he actually created his own enemies. He created his own obstacles as a way to further entrance himself into a psychological state of believing that he's not the only thing that he exists.
Can I make one point to that really quick? Because while I'm not a non-dualist myself, I'm actually fairly agnostic. I'm leaning towards, it depends on what people mean by dualism, because I don't think the mind exists independently of the brain. I think it's all brain activity. However, I don't, the argument, and I think it's kind of what Max was touching on, that might be this fundamental consciousness is an interesting argument to have. And that gets us into solipsism, really, because it would be very similar to that. This fundamental consciousness is ultimately the one mind. The argument I would make in favor of what you're saying, B.S. Lewis, and again, I'm not saying this is my official position, but I do think it's something interesting to consider in favor of this idea. Excuse me. Would be that, how do I articulate this most succinctly? It would be, okay, so the best way for us to be able to reflect on ourselves, because it's extremely difficult to have introspection. It's really a skill set that you have to develop to be able to truly look inside yourself and be critical thinker, almost take an objective position, because everything is being processed subjectively, right? So the only way that we can really see ourselves is very much like when the only way I can see my face or my nose is by looking in a mirror. I can't, my eyeballs are facing forward. I can't see things without reflecting off of something, right? The same thing happens with the inside of who we are, the type of person that we are. So if I was to adopt this position you're talking about, right, instead of this God wanting to, so the reason for it would be that this God wants to be able to understand itself, to reflect on itself. So it has this refraction, kind of what dark light talks about actually a lot, is it would be this fractal of himself to create this reflection so that it could view something that would appear to be external as a way to see what's going on inside God. So how do I feel? Let's just pretend I'm God, for example, right? How do I feel about slavery? How do I feel about women? How do I feel about people of a different skin color? How do I feel about rich people versus poor people? So on and so forth. How do I feel about this kind of stuff? Well, I can create these images and then use them as reflections. Does that kind of make sense?
Except for in my thing, remember, it's in light of the problem of evil. So God is already omniscient. He knows everything. So there's no reason to reflect or discover or whatever. I think it's purely for the form of escapism to ease his.
That is psychologically very deep. That is very interesting. Dark.
Yeah.
Although BS, although BS not to like, well, in your definition of solipsism, you do I know that you know, but the fact is that essentially it puts God in a position of as the ultimate tyrant and sadist, basically.
It's not a flattering position. I'm not saying it is a flattering position. Most Christians will wince at this.
Yeah, because it's nowhere found in scripture. It's just your theory.
The scripture would just be a manifestation of it too. You can't use scripture on this.
Let me answer some positive. Let me answer to some positive.
Scripture got brutal.
So we can all make up
slavery, right?
We can all make up our God and say this is what we think is going on in God's brain and psychologically, but that's not the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible is not described as someone who has psychological issues or psychology to begin with.
Are you serious?
So he doesn't have a psychology to begin with. Okay, but let me answer to some positive claims instead of your wild conspiracy.
You gotta be nuts. Just read the Ten Commandments. It's a paranoid, don't worship anybody.
Paranoid. What does that mean?
God.
Just let him go without interrupting.
What does that mean for someone that doesn't have a brain? What does that mean? Paranoid. What does that mean? Nothing. Okay. So let me answer some positive questions. Okay, some actually positive claims, not these wild. I think God is like this, round robin style. Okay, the Bible gives us a satisfactory answer to the problem of evil, I would say, but to answer your question about the Code of Hammurabi, which was 6 questions ago,
nobody talking about that.
Just leave that question alone.
And that question got left off the table.
You can leave that alone and go forward with.
Yeah, I know you moved on to something else, but there is an answer. Okay, so you asked me, how are they the same? How are they alike? Okay, well, for one, the justice principle. This is a justice principle in the ancient Near East. It's called lex talionis. Okay, so both have it. Both cultures have lex talionis. Many cultures in that region, eye for an eye, have eye.
Are you dodging
it?
I'm trying not to dodge the first.
To kill somebody
I'm trying
else.
to answer the first.
Why does God say that?
Hold on.
In your Bible.
I'm answering the first.
No, you don't got to answer that because
yes, I do, because you'll lie on this stream and you'll say an hour from now that Joe didn't answer that question. So please allow me to answer. I want to answer all.
No, it's not what you want to answer.
Okay, I'll wait, and I'm not going to answer 6 of the 6 questions.
Well, I'm asking you one question. Why does
I'm answering the one question you had an hour ago?
All right, guys, I just need to step in here really quick.
I won't be long.
This touches on what happened last week or the week before. I can't remember. So I'm new at this, and I'm trying to find a fine balance of letting everybody kind of have their free reign and sort things out themselves, or micromanaging the conversation and literally just calling on everybody by name. I really don't want to do that because I feel like we're all adults here and we can work this out. But I do want to remind everybody that 2 things. One, the purpose of my channel is to teach people how to have respectful disagreements, right? To push back on each other's ideas, but to do it respectfully. That's really the goal of my channel. So I appreciate if we all keep that in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is that I assume we all feel like we have something valuable or something useful to say, if we're talking over each other, I've rewatched these videos, nobody can hear shit. They all it sounds like is a bunch of cackling hens. You know, we got to get to a point to where we're letting people finish sentences, and then the other guy gets to go. And to be respectful, be mindful of the fact that there's multiple people who have things to say. So don't just sit here and gish gallop. Try to make a concise point and let someone respond to the point, move the conversation along. And I'd appreciate it if everybody would, you know, kind of police themselves, because I'm not your father, and you're not here to let me boss everybody around. I'm responsible for the person who owns this channel to put out some kind of useful content. And I really value everything you guys are saying, because you're putting information out there that the world can judge. And I respect you all for being willing to do that. And I appreciate you coming here to do it on my platform, but it's got to be functional. So please do keep that in mind, because last show, or the one before that, was a real shit show. And I took a lot of heat from people like, you let that thing get out of, everybody was yelling at each other and talking over each other. And they were right. Like I said, I'm trying to find the balance to all this. So to just everybody cool things for a second, Scott just came in. I'm going to let Scott introduce himself, and then the conversation is open for you guys to take over. I'm actually going to step away and let you guys manage your own shit here while I get my coffee and stuff. So just please keep in mind what it is I'm trying to produce here. And if you do value what you have to say and want it to be heard, I think this all makes sense. And don't leave, you know, Robin hasn't had a chance to get a word in edgewise. So just keep that in mind. Scott, you're up, and then everybody just have at it here politely.
I'm in charge when you're gone. Tell him out.
That's right. I forgot to say Robin is in charge. Actually, I should have just said that. Robin is in charge when I'm gone.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Yo, Scott
here. Hey, from my channel, The Mirror Point. I was just enjoying the conversation, hearing everybody talk, and interesting ideas about God as the solipsist and different ideas. So I'm just listening in. I don't really have so much to say or really challenge anybody, but just kind of enjoying the conversation, see where it goes.
Good to see you, Scott.
Yeah, man. Nice to see you guys.
Well, I guess
May I continue answering your question?
Commanding people to hurt one another.
Yeah, no one cares about the Hammurabi stuff. Move on. Dude.
Well, that's too bad. That's the question I'm going to answer when it's my turn to speak, and then I'll answer your third and your fourth questions after I finish answering the second one. So you don't run next week or a week tomorrow and say, Jill didn't answer these questions. Jill didn't answer this.
Or how about we ask other people questions, because it's not your panel, right? It's not
right ahead.
Yeah.
When it's my turn to speak, I'm going to answer the second question you asked me.
It's not your panel.
That's fine. I'm not taking over the panel. I'm just saying when it's my turn, when I'm given permission to speak, I'm going to answer all your questions. So you have no excuse.
I don't have questions for you anymore, so you don't have.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm going to answer the ones you had before.
You're
going to claim there's no answer to. I never had a Christian answer this question. Right. Never.
Now I'm going to exert my power here.
Oh God.
BS, did you have anything else you wanted to tell us about your theory here you got going?
I just want to address what Max is trying to ask Jill, because that's another part of the heart of the question is, why would a God create his own enemies? He's asking in a different way, like, why does he have people hurt people? That's another like suffering type question. But why does God create his own obstacles and create his own enemies and create his own opportunities for his own heartache? Because if he wants all to be saved, but he's creating a system where only some can be saved, he's setting himself up for heartache. If he was perfect before creation, there's no reason to set all this stuff up for yourself unless you're trying to ground yourself in an adversarial reality, so you don't get sucked into like a yes man version of reality where it doesn't feel real because everybody's always kissing your ass and catering to you.
Well, I just want to say that, and Jill can correct me if I'm wrong. Like, my understanding of like Jill's Christianity is problem of evil is not a problem. From my understanding of talking to other Calvinists, that it's not a problem. It's something that is like, it's not an issue in their idea of who God is. Like, is that correct, Jill?
I'm sorry. What was that?
I mean, is the problem of evil a problem in your view of God? That's the way I've always took Calvinism, is that, because I always said that if the problem of evil is one of the things that made me leave Christianity, And probably if
Okay.
I had known of such a thing as Calvinism, when I still believed in God, I would likely have became a Calvinist because it kind of, yeah, I know, but
Okay.
it kind of solves that problem, I think, in
It
a way.
does. It does solve a lot of problems that a free grace position won't even attempt to. But I think the Bible in general gives it an answer, a satisfactory answer to the problem of evil. But the problem is that a Christian in these types of forums can't speak it long enough for you to hear it. So that's why you wind up leaving these conversations saying no Christian can answer me when it comes to the
Just
code of
answer the
Hammurabi.
question. Jeez.
Exactly. You want to preach. You don't want to answer. You want to preach. We don't want to hear sermons.
So there is a satisfactory answer, but
We don't
when
wanna
I'm
hear-
ready to give you that answer after I finish answering the first two questions,
Rob.
I'll give you that answer.
Okay, Robin shouldn't have asked you your opinion on it then.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, Robin. I'll give you that
I
answer.
appreciate Objective having me on. This guy is like just wasting time. I'll talk to you guys later.
Sure. Because I want to allow you to get
Not you, Jill. I'm talking to other people. It's consists of other people beside you.
Well,
Robin,
what about you, Max? Before,
Robin, I agree
allow
with
him to
you.
get scallop, so.
I agree with you. Calvinism solves a lot of problems, Robin. It does get you out of a lot of stuff in the problem of evil, but it never actually speaks to the motivation of why God created in the first place.
I mean, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's the correct position.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying I didn't grow up even knowing about. I was raised a missionary Baptist, and so free grace is like something that I mean. So I never even until I got into these conversations, probably as a non-believer, even knew that there was such a thing as Calvinism.
The problem of evil is really just another way of saying the problem of creation. If God is perfectly content in an all-loving Trinity, all by Himself, then why create in the first place? And Calvinism does not answer that question.
Well,
the Bible does, not necessarily Calvinism.
Well, kind of like to add, not exactly to answer, but to add on to the pile of 99 problems of why the Bible is problematic. It's basically due to the fact that at some point I say we, but as in Christianity, kind of veered to God is love and God is good and nothing but good. So it's just those two things did not it basically create a quagmire for ideologically, and that's why those two ideology of Calvinism and the former that I just mentioned cannot coexist within.
Yeah, that is part of the problem. I would agree with that. Part of the problem is that certain individuals who call themselves Christians ignore the every aspect of how God describes Himself. Someone like myself, and that's just not necessarily other Calvinists. We accept all of what God says in the Scriptures about His justice and His grace. That both are a part of His nature, and both will be displayed in the earth. But back to lex talionis. So, yes, both have lex talionis. They both have a similar justice principle, but the Code of Hammurabi, it's applied socially. It's literally applied based on your social status. So it's socially stratified. In the Bible, lex talionis is applied there's a balance of mercy and proportional justice. So it is often they have a similar setup, but different applications. That's one of the difference.
I would disagree though, but it's not as in within the Bible. It's basically not exactly within the Bible itself, within scriptures, but it's just if you look at the methods of executions that you have, stoning, burning at the stake, and subsequent other punishments.
Those are punishments, right? Those are punishments.
Yeah, but it just doesn't cooperate.
Are they applied socially, stratified? Meaning, if you're poor, you don't get an eye for an eye. If you are rich, you do get an eye for an eye. So that's the difference. How they are applied. There is balance in the lex talion in the biblical account.
There's no
Even if you
balance.
were a slave, if your master
Mm-mm.
abused you, eye for an eye would apply, Lex-Leon would apply, but not in the Code of Hammurabi. In the Code of Hammurabi, if you were of a lower status, you didn't get that justice. You didn't get eye for an eye. So that's what I mean by proportional justice versus socially stratified justice.
Okay, but historically speaking, that's not what happened. It's basically
Historically speaking. Okay,
in
historically speaking, people broke the law. Great, good job.
Hold on, Joe. Let Chris finish his sentence, please, brother.
yes,
Yes, people
but
broke the
the
laws. Yeah.
people broke the law. Yes, but
Yes.
the punishments were never made equal, regardless of class. You could also call it faith. You could, if you would, if you would be generous. But it's like it's never like the punishments that are prescribed are never that are were never in an equal footing, regardless of who committed the crimes. And that goes for with slavery, that goes with the well, religious wars, etc. It's never equal. So that's one of the things.
Here's another thing, Chris.
Yeah.
If I can, one of the main things is
Never
that
equal.
the authority.
Yep.
You know, the Torah comes from Yahweh, comes from God. The Code of Hammurabi is issued by a human ruler. So that's all you really got to know. There's nothing else to debate.
Hammurabi
Mhm.
does.
Yeah,
say
yeah,
that-
that's
I
another
think
difference.
Hammurabi
That's
does actually credit. I can't remember which. Would it be Marduk or? I think
Oh,
he
does it
actually.
really?
I
It's a
believe
royal
so,
decree.
yeah.
It's a royal decree.
But
he
Hammurabi
claims
does
divine
ultimately
endorsement. Yeah.
organize it. You're right, but I think he does
Yeah.
actually credit it. I can't remember. It might not be Marduk. I'd have to go back
Shamash.
and look.
Shamash.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Well, a false god, put it that way. If I'm wrong on that, I'm wrong. But the thing is that the Bible, the Torah, is authored by God. So
Yeah, that's another
anyone
difference.
anytime you sit here and you talk to atheists or you talk to non-believers, you're giving them the opportunity to be the judge and jury of God. You're not really, it's an unnecessary engagement because the presupposition that they have is a non-God view. So there's no argument. Their whole grounding for critiquing anything, including the Word of God, is going to fall mute. What
I agree with
do
that.
they appeal to
I agree
in
with that.
order to say that the Bible is incorrect or wrong? That's
But
sort of
you're
Calvinist. I don't know. That's sort of, I don't know. That's kind of sort of what, I'm not saying I'm a Christian. I don't believe any
So
of
you're
that.
not a presuppositional Christian. I thought you were. You sounded like one.
I'm very familiar with it, but
Well, I usually
it makes
I
sense,
usually get
though.
that from pre-suppers, and I respond by saying, "Well, sure. I feel it's my job to point out every time they falter. Sure, they have no foundation for what they're saying, and that usually leads to error. And I'm just pointing those errors out."
Yeah. But you know,
That's all.
what I'm saying is a lot of this is appealing to one's subjectivity. So you're never going to crack that wall. As an unbeliever, their reasons for rejecting have nothing to do with any sort of argument that you can lodge against them, and vice versa. Your presupposition is God. That's all you need to know. Anything outside of that is going to fall on deaf ears, and it should. If you're honest and consistent. But once you open up to having these sort of conversations, we can talk about where can the atheists get their grounding from. In fact, is it the same place that the Christian gets their grounding from in their view? We can talk about that, but
I'll never
you know,
pre-sup you. You'll never get a pre-sup argument from Joe. That to me ends the conversation. You're right. I like to play with my food before I eat it.
So where would you get what grounds your
I don't care what grounds it.
your
I don't care
knowledge?
what
What
grounds it.
grounds your knowledge?
I understand that's God, and that's
Okay,
not God
so
for you. That's why I don't argue precept. But if you try to make a claim about what the text says, I can refute that claim,
right, I
even though
get
your
it. I get it.
grounding
And I
is
would
not
not.
biblical. If a Christian said the same thing, if he said the
Yeah.
Bible teaches slavery, I'm like, whoa, whoa. So even though he's grounded in the God being the grounding for his justification for morality, he's still in error when it comes to what the text is communicating.
But I would claim that your grounding is actually in your agency.
That's fine.
And I don't think that you
That
can
shouldn't have no
that.
bearing on whether or not you know what you can read literature, you know what a metaphor
Correct.
is, you know what imagery
But
is.
I'm just saying that if that's what your claim is that your ground is in the Christian God, I would disagree with you.
Okay.
Because your
it's in my
grounding is in your
understanding of who the
agency.
Christian God is.
You are your highest authority.
Yeah, it's in my understanding of who the Christian God is.
Right.
Okay.
And
I don't
that's the
argue.
only
I don't
thing.
argue precept.
Yeah.
That's why I don't argue. I don't use precept. There is a precept or Christian that loves to argue, justification for beliefs, and his name is JG, but he's a
JG.
friend of mine. He has a channel. He loves making those arguments from
Catholic traditionalist. Do you know him?
No, I don't.
Yeah, Dark Light Delirium. I see in the live chat. He knows who he is.
Jay, what did you say his name? JG or whatever. He is somebody that no, that what the precept Christian y'all were talking about.
It's JD.
Yeah.
Yeah, he comes on in Mike's streams every now and then.
He loves to argue precept.
Yeah, he comes in Answers in Atheism too. He's been on his channel before, Scott. So you might have seen him over there.
Now I'm not going to ask you what grounds your understanding, in a meta sense. I'm going to ask you what the heck grounds your understanding of what this text is saying in the immediate context. I'll make it easy for you. Find me in the immediate context or context in general, the Bible, where this is being taught. And that's where I have my discussions with atheists. I don't really care to convince you God exists. I don't feel like that's my job. And I got kicked off of tacos.
You do,
but I don't even get into the does God exist or not, because when that question takes on a whole different meaning for me. I don't take these anthropomorphized gods seriously. It's so nonsensical and contradictory. But when you talk about like the prime mover, like God, Aristotle's concept, or the gods you come across in philosophy, that question does get more interesting to me. But as far as does the Jesus God exist or the Yahweh God, that's just so silly in my opinion. But everyone's got their own right to feel it how they want to. My dinner just showed up, so I'm going to give everybody a chance to have the floor uninterrupted to make final statements. Robin, I'll have you go last because I want to plug a couple things with you. But Robin's got this link up on the screen. So anybody out there, if you guys would consider supporting our friend Simos, check out his channel. I believe it's called Simos Funk, and Robin's got the link highlighted right there. He's so close to getting to 500 subs, and he's a grinder, so he's really trying to make an effort of it. So if you would be so gracious, subscribe to his channel, help a brother out, and then I got to touch on a couple of other things here, but I'll let everybody have their closing remarks, and we'll just go in reverse order of who came in. And so Scott, you go first, and since you were the last one in, you go ahead and go first. Take the floor to yourself. Tell people about your philosophy or whatever it is you want about anything you guys talked about here. Let people know what you're into, and then we'll move on to I think it was Chris that was next.
Sure. So I'm a non-dual idealist, and my show talks about philosophy of mind and epistemology and those sort of things. In my view, the way I approach spirituality is through investigating the nature of consciousness and reality directly through experience, introspectiveness, and awareness. Not so much Bible research, like studying text, history, language, doctrine. I did that years ago, and but it kind of led me to where I'm at. So the difference is direct investigation of experience versus analysis of like some sort of inherited description found in a book or something like that. So what I'm asking is, what is awareness itself right now? And it sort of points to immediate experience, first person inquiry. Whereas like Bible research would ask, what does this text say about God, reality, morality, or the history, the story, the narrative? And that for me is just secondhand mediated through text, tradition, interpretation. So I'm more of an experience type guy, direct experience is more fundamental than interpretation of text, but that's just me. And I'll give it away.
Thank you for keeping it somewhat concise, because my wife is like, you said you're going to be off at 4:00 and yeah, dinner's sitting over here. What the fuck is going on? So thank you for that, brother. It's always good to see you stop by. You tell Sophia I said hello, and she's always welcome to stop by as well. We had Joel here earlier. He hasn't been on the panel yet, but it's always nice to see you guys stop by and say hello.
Yeah.
Chris, you've got the floor next, brother. Go ahead, and you've got your final word. Say whatever you'd like to say.
Well, at least as far as I'm concerned, in those discussions, being an anti-theist, even if it's like the more positive claim, and the hard position of that, I still just kind of like run around and go to those panels and just try to do stuff or just talk, I guess. But essentially, it's just for me. I'm just kind of doing this for fun. But yeah, okay. Yield the floor.
Well, Chris, it's always so nice to have you stop by. You've actually been one of my biggest supporters. I think you're pretty much here from the beginning, and I feel like you bring a lot to the conversation, actually. And I think that you have a lot of personal experiences that you've been very gracious to share with people, and we can always learn from each other, the struggles that we all go through, and they can be very inspirational to people. And I think you're doing very well for yourself, and I appreciate you coming by and just bringing your personality to the show and your pushback too. That's really important. That's what we're here to do with each other. Yeah. All right, Jill, I think you're up next, brother. So feel free to please try to keep it as concise. I know you've probably got a lot you want to address, but we'll have to do that on another show. Okay. But here's your chance.
Oh yeah, I'll keep it concise, short and sweet. I'm the Christian that you pretend as though you want to ask questions to, but you really don't want the answers to those questions. So I often will get questions, but will not be allowed to answer them. But if you really want questions answered, if you really are serious about your questions, and you're not just looking to hold on to more excuses not to believe. So I'm going to psychoanalyze you, because you do have a brain. God doesn't. So we can psychoanalyze. We have the right context for psychoanalyzation, since there are brains involved. But I can answer your questions. I have a channel, Rebuke and Reprove, at gmail.com. I can answer pretty much all of them. Just give me one question at a time, please. That's all I ask. And that's all. Thanks for having me on, OE, again.
No, brother, despite our fundamental differences, and you still are a brother as far as I'm concerned. In my worldview, I think we're all brothers and sisters. So I do always wish you the best. I think that you're wrong about a lot of things, but you probably think I'm wrong about a lot of things. So what we have to do is figure out a way to treat each other with respect and live in the same world and share this planet and try to lift each other up where we can. So I appreciate you trying to be a part of that. And thanks for stopping by. And I know it's always tough when you're in the hot seat, and sometimes, a few shows ago we had a pretty even distribution of theists and non-theists, and today you were the only theist, so a lot of stuff got kind of sent your way, but that's all right. You handle it well. Robin, okay. You're up next.
See you guys. God bless.
Absolutely. So you got the floor here in just a second to tell everybody about your amazing channel. But I want to just tell you how much I appreciate you and how proud I am of you for what you're doing with your channel. And I think you're creating a great community and a great environment over there. You guys got into some politics last time I saw your show. And I think you also touched on a really important topic. Is the Bible harmful to women. I know that might not be the exact title, but that's kind of the gist of it all. And I think that's a really important topic, because I do think that these Abrahamic religions do promote misogyny and sexism against women in particular, as well as bigotry against the LGBT community. So I just think that we need to highlight that stuff, and you do a really good job with that. So let me turn this over to you so you can like say something really cool right now, since I put all that pressure on you.
Yeah, something really cool. Yeah, I did the video I had picked out. I somehow managed to get just a clip of it, so it was short, and then I had a bunch of company come in. So I'm going to do another stream on the harm of the Abrahamic. Like I had all of them in there, religions on women and what trauma it's caused women and stuff, and how the views on it. And not to leave out the other religions, but I'm the Abrahamic religions affect the women in my life and the women in my society far more than any of the other religions. So, and there's 3 of them, and they're affecting the whole world right now, since they're all in war, in what they call the Holy Lands. So, I call them the Abrahamic death cults, is what I refer to them as, and I always probably will. But yeah, and everybody, Objective Ethics and Jill have a debate on May 18th coming up, and it'll be on my channel. And Objective Ethics will stream it to his, and I'm assuming that Jill will stream it to his. If he don't, I don't know. But I did get something. I went in there and messed up the links, so I'm gonna have to go back and do some stuff, work in the studio, and put the links to their channels back in there again or something. But I appreciate everybody helping me support. Please support Simos. He only likes 18 subs to get to 500, and so that's been my this is my personal goal, to try to get Simos is 500. So if you're not subscribed to Simos, he's wonderful. He does philosophy and he does car racing. So, and thank you, OE. Just love you to death, brother.
Absolutely. And yeah, definitely. I know car racing and philosophy. What a combination that is. That's hilarious. So Robin mentioned, and she's right, I do have a debate coming up with Jill, who was here on the panel today. We're going to be, it's a formal debate. Robin's going to be moderating that and hosting that. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be mid-May. I forget the exact day. I think she mentioned it 18th or something like that. It's on a Saturday we agreed to, I believe, probably mid-May. So whatever that turns out to be, but I'll keep you guys posted with that. I've done a few formal debates. The topic is going to be biblical, quote unquote, morality. Obviously, most people know, who are skeptics, they know there is no such thing as biblical morality, but I'll go ahead and lay out my case for that, my strongest argument, and see how Jill handles that. I think we all know how that's going to go, but we'll give Jill a chance to muddle his way through it anyway. And I appreciate Robin for being so gracious to be willing to host that debate. What am I doing here? I tried to take this. Sorry, guys. I just a little distracted here. I was going to take this off just so it's not so much of a distraction. But yes, I'm not going to find that damn thing. Oh, here it is. So please do support Simos. Here's the link to his channel. He does. I don't know him personally, but he seems to be a really nice guy. He's very intelligent. I do know enough about him to tell you he's a really smart guy. And so if you do like philosophy, and I believe he talks about evolution as well, if it's the same person I'm thinking of. I know we have Austin, who showed up in the chat today. Couple of shows coming up. So next week, this next Sunday, we're going to be, it'll be part 3 of my discussion with A's philosophy about free will. I don't believe in libertarian free will. My interlocutor, A's philosophy, who's a Christian, he does believe in free will. So we've had a couple of really good talks already. We've got part 1 and part 2 are on my channel. This will be part 3. Hopefully we'll be able to wrap it up, but it's such a deep topic because we got into like mind and versus the mind-body problem, for example, the hard problem of consciousness, just so many different topics that are related to free will. We haven't even gotten a chance to talk about ethics yet. So I'm going to try and get into that in this next one, but we're just letting it flow organically. It's been a very interesting conversation. It's been continuing on. So please do check that out. The following week, we're going to have, speaking of Austin, he's going to come by and we're going to be talking about evolution. That seems to be a pretty hot topic. We had quite a heated panel. I can't remember now if it was last week or the week before, but there was quite a heated panel when it came to evolution. It always amazes me when people reject the theory of evolution, just given how much evidence there is for that. But I'm not the biologist. So hearing it from somebody like me, is probably meaningless, because all I'm going to be doing is just quote mining, basically, right? Citing other experts who know what they're talking about. And I don't know enough about it to be able to judge the information, say, well, that's good or bad information. This is why it's important that we have a good system of how do we get our information, right? We need to rely on the people who do know what they're talking about, because a lot of the people who I see denying evolution don't even know anything about biology. They might read an abstract here or there and they think they have an idea, but basically they're building their beliefs off of presupposition of creationism, young earth creationism oftentimes, which is problematic from the get-go, right? Because when the biggest question I have with people who deny evolution in favor of creationism is, let's just set evolution aside for a second. We have zero evidence. Not one single time has anybody seen a giraffe pop up out of the dirt, or a person pop up out of the dirt, or anything pop up out of the dirt other than a tomato plant or something, right? We don't see animals popping up out of the dirt, which is the creationist model, right? It starts with Adam, comes up out of the dirt. The animals come up out of the dirt. You know, how do we don't have any evidence of that ever happening. We discover new species. Where's the dirt they popped up out of, right? They just poofed out of nothing. Is it out of ex nihilo? Which begs another question: is where did this dirt come from? Then you have to get into the whole, where did creation come from? Is it out of something that already existed, or is it creation ex nihilo? I mean, the creation model causes so many problems, and none of those problems have any answers. So to postulate a theory that has zero evidence in favor of a theory that has tremendous amount of evidence is nonsensical. It's completely illogical and unreasonable, in my opinion. I think Mark Reed, I'm a big fan of Mark Reed's. He said it best, and I oftentimes quote him because it just made me laugh so hard the first time I heard him say this. But he says, people are abandoning the well-evidenced theory of evolution in favor of the talking snake magic fruit theory. And that's what it really boils down to. Literally, you got the talking snake, you got the naked lady in the garden with a magic apple, and that's what people are taking seriously. It's so ridiculous. I just can't even. I don't know. I don't know where to begin with that. Now, if a religious person wanted to go with what they call theistic evolution, you know, that's much more palatable to me. Even though I don't believe in the God, at least I can. That's much more palatable. You know, say God created the world using the law evolution. The laws of physics already existed, because that solves the problem of where did God come up with all this shit? It just pop it out of nowhere. So yeah, I think there are ways you could try to harmonize these things, and I think the more reasonable Christians and theists do try to harmonize these things intelligently. But to just hand wave away evolution. So Austin will come by. He's sent me some great graphs. I'm going to try to make some time to put that into a PowerPoint presentation for the discussion, so I'll have some visual aids. But he really knows his shit when it comes to that topic, and I'm really looking forward to be able to share that with you guys from somebody who actually does know what they're talking about. And so looking forward to having Austin here. I feel like there's one more Sunday in this month, and I can't recall who's coming to that one. Next month, the first Sunday of every month, we do our Failed Prophecy series with Johnny B. He's done an excellent job with that series. I have actually a playlist with, I think we've done 4 or 5 different videos on that. So that's Failed Messianic Prophecies. We touched on the virgin birth prophecy, quote unquote prophecy. We touched on Micah chapter 5. We touched on the suffering servant, the Jesus genealogy. So we've been touching on a few different ones. He's done such a great job with that. So stay tuned for that. That's the first Sunday of every month. And then after that, I have a special guest coming up. He goes by Life Abolitionist, and he is an antinatalist. So for all of you who are interested in the topic of antinatalism, which is fascinating, it's the claim that it is fundamentally unethical to bring children into the world because of all the suffering and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting philosophical position. I'm looking forward to getting to that conversation with him. I shouldn't say obviously, I reject the position that it is fundamentally unethical to bring children into the world, but I'm going to let LA come and make his case. He's a very intelligent young man, and he's well-spoken. So I think it'll be a really great show to be a part of. And I've basically got guests booked all the way out through into June, because I have so many people who want to come on the show, and which is really flattering that people want to be a part of this. And so if you do want to be a guest on the show, the way I run it, if it's your first time here today, I didn't do a Dr. Carrier because his time is very valuable and limited, but normally I would have the guest will stick around after they make their presentation, and then the open panel portion includes usually they include themselves in the open panel portion, and then they can interact with the audience directly. So it's because these panels, these Sunday shows, are supposed to ultimately be open panels. So if I have a guest, we'll do like a one-on-one conversation with the guest so they can make their case without being interrupted and stuff like that, and we can have a great productive discussion. And then after that, we open up the panel for people to join. So I do have guests booked every Sunday, but I will be doing an open panel every Sunday as well. And I appreciate all the participation today. The final thing I have to say, hopefully the final thing, I'm trying to wrap this up, is the Ark Encounter protest. So speaking of denying science, I've put out a video talking about how ridiculous the global flood myth is, that people still try to claim this is true is nonsensical. There is a monstrosity of a building that's out there in Kentucky that is, I think it's the Ken Ham. I can't remember which I think it is Ken Ham who runs that, but it's based on the Young Earth Creationist Foundation or something like that. And they put up this, I think it's a multi-million-dollar structure that's supposed to be like this replica a bit of the Ark. And they've got all these like exhibits inside of it to try and basically indoctrinate children. It's really targeted at children to indoctrinate them into believing that there was this global flood and that all these animals, the lions and the tigers, lived right next to the little bunny rabbits, and everybody was so happy on the Ark. And the whole story is so stupid. And the fact that they use taxpayer money and they get tax write-offs because it's a religious organization is a crime. It's a violation of the Constitution, in my opinion. It does not separate church and state like it should. And there's a lot of other issues with it, including, like I said, the indoctrination of children. So we are supporting that event financially. I'm making my own financial donations. Bionic Latino, who's in the chat, he has made donations as well. So I do have a link that's in the description of this video. I think I put it in this and in the last one with Dr. Carrier. And every video I do up until the protest, I'm going to include that link because I really want you guys to, if you can afford to, support that effort. All the money that you donate goes directly to the protest event. It's an annual event. This is the 10-year anniversary, so it should be a big show. They've got a lot of great speakers that are coming. I'll try to get a list together so I can tell you who those are and stuff like that. But it looked like a really good show already. If you can attend, I encourage you to do so. It looks like it was a great meet and greet because there's so many of us that are like interacting with each other online through these various communities. But to get a little bit of FaceTime and actually talk to these people in person, it's really great experience, I would imagine. So please do support that effort. And I cannot think of anything. I think I gave my rundown on the conversation I had with Dr. Carrier in the video that we posted. That was an excellent interview. Dr. Carrier shared so much great information on objective morality, where we get it from, how it's grounded. We could probably do a part 2 of that because it does get really deep really quickly. But I think the fundamental thing to remember is that, as I've said so many times before, right, we're all human beings. We're all equal, which is where we need to start. That's our starting point, that we all have the same basic rights and the same basic needs. And we can build up a way to behave that will support that using an objective standard. This is where we get objective morality from. But we need to remember we use the hypothetical imperative to get there. So in the same way that you would say, if a doctor wants to perform a successful surgery, he ought to sterilize his equipment. That's objectively true. The successful surgery is a subjective position, right? He selects a goal subjectively, which is he wants to perform that successful surgery. It's objectively true that once that goal is set, there are methods that he will use to best ensure that surgery is successful. It's objectively true that sterilizing his equipment will help him to meet that goal. Morality works the same way. If you want to live in a cooperative society, right, you ought not murder people. It's objectively true that murdering people, right, chopping people's heads off with hatchets, locking people in your basement, doing whatever kind of weird shit people do out there is going to be detrimental to the goal of cooperation, right? We are a social species that's set up by the laws of evolution, right, which is guided by the laws of physics, right? So the process of evolution is objective. The laws of physics are objective. We're a social species. That's all objective. We subjectively select the goal of cooperation because that's what we were evolved to do. How we best flourish is by cooperating with each other. Then we can go ahead and look at the objective standards. How do we behave? The simplest way to figure it all out from there is to use the golden mean, right? That perfect balance in between having too much of something or too little of something. So courage is that perfect middle place between recklessness and fear. justice is that perfect middle ground between revenge and unwarranted mercy. And we can go through all of the humility is that perfect balance between having too much of an ego, right? Being selfish and self-deprivation. So in between those two things is where you get actual humility from. And you can literally look at anything in life and figure out what this balance is yourself, if you're willing to be rational and reasonable. And so it doesn't take somebody to write a Bible or to create laws to tell you how to have to behave. You should be able to figure that out, that stealing your neighbor's shit is not going to be conducive to a cooperative system. You don't want your shit to be taken, so don't take somebody else's shit, right? It's pretty fucking basic. I think that's pretty much everything. It's dinner time for me. My family's been very gracious to let me just kind of ramble on here. I appreciate you all for stopping by. Please do, if you would be so gracious, like and subscribe to my channel, share these videos, and participate in the conversation. Thank you so much.
Channel 3.30 for repeating, of course. That's better than I've done before. Deacon Brennan, what do you do? Wait, objective ethics will be on your plate.